Hi, and welcome to a special edition of A Wonket Chat. We have a very special guest today, and this is the lovely Ashbey Beasley. And you may have seen her pretty much everywhere this entire week on practically every station. I could not keep track. She is a survivor of the Highland Park shooting, and she interrupted the Nashville, the broadcast, Fox's broadcast of the Nashville shooting in order to make a really awesome statement about gun control. And here she is. Ashby, you want to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a mom. I live in Highland Park. And last summer, my son and I survived a mass shooting here at our 4th of July parade. And since then, I've been lobbying in DC to pass a federal assault weapon ban and other pieces of gun safety legislation. And I just happened to be in Nashville, visiting my sister-in-law after a trip to DC when the shooting happened. And it's been a crazy week. It's been a very crazy
That
week.
is bananas. That is absolutely bananas. Like the coincidence. How did you hear about it and then go down there, or were you like in the area? Like,
Well, I was visiting my sister-in-law, and she was actually
yeah.
with my son at the zoo. And I had made plans to meet a friend of mine. And the crazy part is that only in America can you become friends with another person who has a connection to a mass shooting. My friend that I
Oh
was
my
meeting, her
God.
name is Sean Brooks. Her son was killed in a mass shooting in a Waffle House in Antioch, Tennessee,
Oh my
five
God, I
years
remember that.
yeah. And so I was connected with her by another gun violence prevention friend who asked me last year, can you take Shondell to some of your meetings in DC? And I was like, sure. And we became friends. And so I was in town and I called her and I was like, do you want to go to lunch? Like, let's hang out. Let's not talk about guns. Let's not talk about any of this. Let's just go to
Oh
lunch.
my
Let's have
God.
lunch. And so we made a plan. I was on my way to the Thistle Farm Cafe, and then she called me while I was in Target about to head over and said, my son's school is on lockdown. There's been a mass shooting down the
Oh my
street
God,
from
it
his
was
high
her son's
school.
school?
No, it was down the street from her son's school, but her son's school was locked down.
Oh my
And she
God.
like completely frantic. She was very upset. And I was just like, where are you? I'll come to you. And so I went to meet her, and her son's school is just down the street from where this happened. And she couldn't get into the school or get her son because the school was completely locked down. So we just, found our way over to the school where it happened. And that's how I wound up there. But yeah, we were on vacation, like just, but this is
I,
becoming like I'm starting to see a trend. Like people are surviving multiple mass shooting events. Not that I survived this one, but just like being near or experiencing multiple mass shooting events in like we have kids in Oxford, Michigan who survived a mass shooting at that high school and then are now students at MSU. There's a couple students who were at Sandy Hook and now are students at MSU. I have a friend named Dion whose father was killed at the Toledo mass shooting, and then he survived the Santa Fe mass shooting. They're so happening so often that it's not becoming uncommon to hear it. And on
that's
Twitter, several people commented and said, I know people who've survived more than one or have been involved in more than one. It's becoming a lot more common than you think, and it's really scary.
Oh yeah, and of course the conspiracy theorists see that and they're like, oh, they're all actors. They're all appearing at the same shootings because they're, terrible like the people who spread these are terrible human beings, and they end up, trying to create this whole narrative that everything in the entire world is a false flag, uh, which
Yeah.
is pretty horrifying. So crazy fact, we actually know each other for like I've known you for like a long time now. Ashby used to come into the store that I worked at all the time. She had a really adorable dog, like that I
Yeah, I mean,
recall.
I've known you since before I met my husband.
Yeah,
I think I had just like met my husband, or it was like around that time, like over 15 years ago.
good old Handle with Care, which does not exist anymore. I'm
Good
not owning
plug.
it.
Yes, Handle with Care is the cutest store. They have the best stuff. They really did. They were like a block from my house
You know,
apartment.
we did have good stuff. Um, but yeah, no, apparently it's not around anymore. I looked it up the other day. But so yes, anyone doubting the veracity of Ashby's existence, I can verify that I have known her for a really long time, and I could not freaking believe it. My jaw was on the floor. I was like, that freaking Ashbey Beasley. Like,
What in the world? Yeah, it's
I was
been a
like,
crazy
how does
week.
that, like, I was just like, of all the people, like, it's just very random. Um, but oh my gosh. So you've had like a crazy few days here. You were telling me about you went on Piers Morgan, which is bananas,
Yeah,
and got to
yeah.
talk with
They
the
had a mobile
lovely and
studio.
talented.
They had a mobile studio that drove up to my sister-in-law's house. My sister-in-law lives in Nashville, and we were still in
Oh my
Nashville. And
god.
it was like a truck, and you could get in, and it had like a whole backdrop. And I was like, wow, this is production. There's a guy who owns. There's a company that owns them, and they drive around and they do. It was interesting. I just something I didn't know. I thought
No,
everything
I
was
never. Yeah,
set
no,
up.
that is a super new one on me. And you appeared with Tommy Lahren, who is just a peach. And they're both super transphobic, which is,
And
awkward.
even Pierce was like, it doesn't matter. Like he said that in the broadcast. He was like, I guess the person is trended. Not that it matters, it doesn't matter. I mean, he
Yeah.
was genuinely like, we had a really bad shooting in Scotland in 1996. We changed all of our gun laws and we've never had another shooting again. And he was trying to get Tommy to, put forth some gun safety solutions. And of course, she just wanted to talk about mental health and the fact that the shooter was trans.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a very productive thing, but yeah, it was an experience. She's
Yeah.
very angry.
She is. She is. Actually, like, I think one of the few, like, decent viewpoints Piers Morgan does have is that he is very anti-gun, because I think pretty much everyone in other countries is just like, the United States is batshit. Why do they let all of this keep happening? And that
And
is just,
it's kind of interesting because you'll talk to conservative pundits and it's always the same things. It's like mental health and all that, and it's like, well, they have that in other countries too. They just don't have the access to weapons that we have.
yeah,
Like they just have stricter gun laws, and then they'll talk about things like Mexico and they'll blame Mexico for like all this violence and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but like Mexico has the toughest gun laws in the world. They have one gun store on a military base, and like they're getting the cartels are getting their guns from us, like from
yeah,
us. Like they smuggle them into Mexico from like Texas and Arizona. And it's just, like we need to do something. We need to change something because, you can be 18 and go into like a gun show or, some places where you don't even have to have a background check. And it's like this is like a military grade. This is like a weapon that was made for combat. And yeah, our gun laws are and then you have places that want to do open carry. Like
yeah. Oh
Texas
no,
just
they
passed
have
open
open
carry.
carry like in practically all of the red states now at this point. They're going to Starbucks and Walmart like with 45,000 guns strapped to them, and then they're like, "Oh, why are people freaking out?" Um, which is just horrifying.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I've ever seen
And
it
then
in
they
person, but I would probably pass right out.
one of the I met this lady who like had like a shop of some sort, like in this like little shop area actually before the Pierce interview, and she was telling me that like this guy came in, with a gun holstered on his hip, and that this, he came in. She's like, I don't know why he was in my shop, but he was just in there doing whatever. And then he left, and like these other people that were definitely from out of town came running in, and they were like, "There's a guy with a gun. There's a guy with it." She was like, "That's what they do around here. Like
Yeah.
it's just the way it is around here. It's bizarre. I don't know."
I mean, it's horrifying. I can't even, like, I truly, like, I don't think I've ever actually seen a gun in person before. And I'm very, very, I feel very lucky about that. So tell me about some of the bills that you've been pushing for.
So I've definitely been trying to pass a federal assault weapon ban, and for a number of reasons. I recently shot an AR-15. My husband and I went to Wisconsin to shoot one, because in Illinois you have to have a FOID card, and it's just you can't just like walk in. Luckily, where we live, you can't just like walk in and shoot one,
Well,
but you can go to
that's one of the
Wisconsin.
good
They
things
won't
about
ask you. It
our.
is. It is. We just passed a ban here, so that's great. So, but it's all of the states around us that we have to worry about, like Wisconsin and Indiana and Iowa. But they didn't even like take our IDs. They didn't even check our IDs. They just like handed us an assault weapon. We're like, here, go ahead. And we were like, yeah, we need you to show us how to use it because we don't know how to use it. But like the history of it is it was made for combat. And I mean, I fired one of these things, and it was sort of like part of like the healing process, but also because if I'm going to be, working on this, I should be familiar in some way with what it is. And I mean, it's like built for comfort. Like it doesn't like, there's no recoil. It doesn't, you don't have to like be
Mhm.
worried about yourself in the face. You can put your eye on the barrel, and you don't have to worry about getting hurt. It's literally made for ease and comfort. It's super light. It's definitely made for combat, and I don't know how they're legal. I don't know, and that's they're using them in Mexico. The cartels are arming themselves in Mexico, so I think it's really critical that we pass a federal assault weapon ban, because I don't think citizens should have them. And then also there's the problem at the border with like Mexican cartels arming themselves with them. And I think it's just time to get to stop selling them to citizens. So I've been working on that. And then also a background check bill that would require a background check on every single gun purchase, which I don't know how this isn't a thing yet, because 90% of Americans support universal background checks. And that's a lot
Well, the
of
NRA has a
people.
lot of money, or they did. I think
Well,
they're
the
losing a lot
NRA,
of money lately.
it's like, but it's even like 70% of like NRA card carrying members support, stricter gun laws and gun safety legislation. Like even they support it because even they know it's important,
Yeah.
and we still, struggle. And so that bill, and then another bill that's a gun safe storage bill. So
That is so important. I can't believe that, like, I have to report on so many accidental toddler shootings,
Mhm.
and every single, I just cannot even, like, how are we having, like, people are just like, oh, I'm just going to leave my gun out around my kid, and then they're going to go and shoot the neighbor or shoot grandma because they're just a kid playing with what they think is a toy. And, like, we have a bizarre amount of, like, number of those a year. I don't have the exact statistics, but
It's like 4 point some odd million kids live in a home with a weapon that is loaded and not secured. The numbers are like, it's millions of kids live in a house with a gun that's not secured. It's
that's not in the Constitution. Like, it's not like, I mean, I personally disagree with the current interpretation of the Second Amendment anyway, because well-regulated, like, it meant that they needed to actually, like, the government was supposed to arm people because they were part of a, like, we didn't have a standing army, that we didn't have the National Guard, we didn't have like an army all the time. And
right.
so basically it was, if like, the United States needed to arm people and train them properly so that if there was a if the British did start coming again, they would be prepared. They didn't want people to be unprepared, which is why, like, regulated meant not like a lot of people think that it means like gun regulations. No, it did mean they were supposed to be like fashioned with the weapons of the day via the government, because it was what we had instead of a standing army, because they were all very opposed to having a standing army. But now that we have a standing army, there's really no actual purpose, and the whole idea of it, like an individual independent right to guns, is so new historically, that I believe it's only been about 20 years since that's been established, which is, about the time when mass shootings have gone up incredibly. I think, of an unfortunately large part of this is that people genuinely believe that they have the right to own guns so that they can overthrow the government, which they're not legally allowed to do. Like, there are all these people in prison right now because they tried to overthrow the government. So clearly, that was not put in there as an option in case you want to overthrow the government.
Right. I mean, and back in 1986, we passed a law called the Firearm Owners Protection Act, and it was actually introduced by a Republican. It was given the blessing of the NRA, and it effectively banned the future sale and manufacture of machine guns.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when people talk to me about this, I'm like, "How many machine guns do you own?" And they're like, because like to own like an M16, which came after the AR-15. So the AR-15 was designed by the Armalite Rifle Company. They couldn't sell it. They couldn't sell it to the government. That's what they made it for. They made it for combat. They couldn't sell it to the government. They sold it to Colt, another gun manufacturer, and they redesigned it and created the M16. So the M16 is what they armed soldiers in Vietnam with. And so then ultimately, at the end of the war, Colt revived the AR-15 and started marketing it to hunters and law enforcement. And so that's how it came on to the consumer market. In 1986, they did the Firearm Owners Protection Act, and it more or less banned the future sale and production of machine guns like the M16, which is a fully automatic weapon. But you can still own one. So if you owned one, it was grandfathered in, and then you can still own one. You have to go through a very long, arduous process to be able to buy it. You have to go through an incredibly extensive background check and other things. It takes 10 months to a year. So the people that buy these, they care about it. We don't see mass shootings done with them. And so it's really the easy access that is that's what makes the AR-15 so deadly and why it's used so much, because people do own semi-automatic weapons, or do own machine guns and fully automatic weapons, and we don't see mass shootings done with those.
Yeah, no, you're right. That is an extremely good point.
And I think that in 1986, it was a mistake not to ban the AR-15. It should have been banned.
Well, they were banned for a very long time.
Right. Obviously, we went back and we did ban them from 94 to 2004, where we learned that mass shootings went down. You were 70% less likely to be killed in a mass shooting during that time frame. And both of these bills had really strong bipartisan support. It was not just Democrats, just deciding. I mean, the first bill.
Well, Reagan got shot, so they were a little bit more
and
amenable.
The bill in 1986 was introduced by a Republican. It had so much support. It had a voice vote. Everyone was let's just get this done and go home. You know what I mean? And I don't know what happened between then and now to where now we can't even get bipartisan support on a safe storage law. You know what I mean? And I know people who go and talk to lawmakers, and they try to pass the safe storage law, and they say to them, I don't want to tell people what they have to do with their guns. And we're just asking them to keep them away from kids. We're not even saying how it has to be done. It's it's an individual personal standard. So it's just a reasonable personal standard. If you have a toddler, put it on a high shelf. It's not even saying it has to be locked or unloaded or anything. It's literally just keep it out of reach of children. And we struggle to get bipartisan support on bills like that. It's crazy to me.
Well, it's this whole idea that has very much become popularized since Ruby Ridge and the whole militia movement, where any kind of regulation on guns, no matter how reasonable, is there, these people go through the roof, just the mere mention of it, hey, let's make a law so that, your toddler doesn't blow his head off. And they're no, I'm not so sure that. What about our freedom to have our toddlers blow their heads off?
Have you seen the Instagram photo that Andy Ogles put up? So there's a Christmas card photo, but there's another one. There's a photo of an infant, and they're holding called an airsoft gun, which is, technically a lot of people call it, or saying it's a toy, but I mean, it still fires actual pellets, BBs, and it's a baby that does not look old enough to even walk, and they're holding it in the picture, and his caption says weapons training, and it's just
that is absolutely nuts.
I retweeted it on my thing, and it's just you're just looking, you're that's a baby. That's like a 1-year-old baby. Like we went to Wisconsin to shoot, AR-15s. My son was at school, but we were like, do people bring their kids here? And they were like, oh yeah, people bring 5-year-olds here. And I'm literally like, I would never hand my 5-year-old gun, and not because not specifically for the reason that my 6, well, he's 7 now, but my child would just wave like everyone would be a danger. Like I would never trust my child to, you know what I mean? Like he would
I
be like,
wouldn't trust myself.
Yeah.
Like I cut my hand with a knife the other day while I was like cutting up an orange. Like I should in no way be trusted with any kind of serious weaponry. Like I don't that like when I was a kid, even like one of the things that you learn for like general human safety was, hey, if someone has a gun at their house, get the hell out of that house. Like if you're at your friend's house and they say like, hey, do you want to come see my parents' gun? You're supposed to leave. That is in fact the reason I crossed the street for the first time, because my friend was like, my dad has a gun. And I was like, okay, I will see you later. I am going across the street back to my house. Like,
yeah.
And there's this sense that any kind of anything that we could do to make these things happen less, other than their various stupid ideas like fewer doors, because who doesn't need a Triangle Shirtwaist Factory situation happening again? Like, look, instead of having kids die in a mass shooting, we'll have them die in fires. Like that, what a great plan that is. But and they just keep reaching for every single excuse. They're like, oh, we could have fewer doors. We could have, like we could just say that it's mental illness and then never actually give anyone any kind of help for mental illness in general. And most shooters are not mentally ill to begin with. Although several states have no problem actually executing the mentally ill anyway. But
I mean, in other countries, there are several countries that require you to have a mental health exam before you're allowed to buy a gun. Something that like Tommy Lahren kept saying is like, we need to be training people to guard our children. I almost wanted to be like, great, let's train everybody. Let's require everybody who wants to buy a gun has to take a class and like pass an exam to say that they know how to store it properly, how to use it properly. Like, all of these things, because these are things do in other countries. Like the way you get a gun in another country is insane. Like their laws some of them are just like they'll go to your neighbors. They're going to go to your neighbors and ask your neighbors if you should have a gun. You have to write a paper in some countries. You have to go through multiple exams. They want to see your medical records. Like they just don't mess around. And like here, they're like, oh, do you have an ID? Like, oh, you go to the shooting range and they're just like, here. No ID, nothing, just here. I mean, and I'm like my friend that was with us, because my husband, myself, and a friend, she was like, we could have just shot this place up and left. And I told someone that, and they said that happens. And I'm like, what? And they were like, oh yeah, that happens. Like that has happened before. Someone has done that before. And I mean, it's just crazy to me. But honestly, though, the majority of mass shooters, like 77% of mass shooters, buy their weapon, that use an AR-15, buy it legally. Like this isn't, people always want to go like, well, these are criminals. Well, they're not actually criminals until they pull the trigger and they kill people. Because before that, they are legal gun owning, legal, eligible to buy guns legally, purchasing them legally. We're not seeing people run around and like get guns illegally to commit these crimes. Like the shooter in Nashville bought all those guns legally. I think they said that they had like 5 or 7 weapons.
I think it was 7 last I saw.
Purchased from 5 stores, right? From 5, it was 7 guns from 5 stores legally. I mean, this is what we see. And from 94 to 2004, we didn't see people like go out and illegally like steal guns or just like so desperate to get their hands on guns and commit mass shootings. Instead, we saw mass shootings go down. We saw your likelihood of being killed in a mass shooting with an AR-15 like go way down, because people aren't trying to go out and get a hold of it. They just they can just go into a store and get one. There's no waiting periods. Sometimes there's no background checks, and it's just
but of course they have waiting periods for abortions, or they did when they were legal in most states. Like
Seriously, like let's ban books, like, but not worry about guns. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, because that's how they're keeping the kids safe. The kids aren't gonna, accidentally read Toni Morrison, but let them have all the guns they want. That's gonna work out really well, I would imagine.
they banned a book about fry bread. Like, I'm Native American, and fry bread is Native American bread. It's like a lot of tribes have different versions of it. They banned a kid's book called Fry Bread. It's about fry bread.
Right.
It was banned in several states, and I was literally like, it's about bread. Like, Native American, I'm baffled. I'm baffled.
I can't even think of why that would be. And I've written like 14 different articles by now on the book bans. That is a new one. Although one thing I'll tell you, what they do not ban from these libraries? Like when they ban the, smut from public libraries, Flowers in the Attic. Every single one of them has a copy of freaking Flowers in the Attic.
Or Lolita. Lolita. They don't,
yeah.
Lolita is fine.
You remember I think those books should be fine. I definitely read Flowers in the Attic when I was 12, like a normal person. But
they probably haven't banned any Anne Rice books either, and those were pretty.
Oh no, actually, I think they did in one place, but probably because of magic and vampires. Because
right,
they always think that like people are like, oh no, the kids are going to catch girls. Because that's another thing that they need to protect the children from, not guns. Like,
no, there's witches in Rice books. Witches.
Yeah.
Sure. No, Lolita is still in, and I remember reading Lolita as a teenager and being like, whoa, this is like, isn't it like her stepfather like takes her across the country? But that book's fine apparently. And I'm like, that book's really a lot, like just like Flowers in the Attic. Like, this is not, I don't think, way racier than, I don't know, the books that they've banned, like Fry Bread.
Yeah, no, I can't even believe that. That is absolutely bananas.
Yeah.
No, and today,
I think it has something at the end of it. I think it has something at the end of it, like an epilogue that says something about like stolen land or something, and so that's probably why they banned it. But
yeah,
not that it's, I mean, it's true.
Make the white kids feel bad.
Yeah,
can blow their heads off.
I'm totally on board.
Yeah, you can blow their heads off, but if you come for their self-esteem, R.E. bread.
Yeah, I did a video recently on like Instagram, and it had so many views. It was like, oh, I'm totally fine if they want to, what I heard, they want to get rid of some history because it makes some kids feel bad. Like, I get it. Like, I had to sit through like the settlers and the glorification of the pilgrims. Like, let's get rid of that. Let's not teach it anymore. I'm fine with it. Let's stop teaching about, presidents who were presidents during slavery or during segregation. Like, that makes, Black people feel like shit. Let's get rid of that history. Like, let's just replace all of it with goat yoga. You know what I mean? Like, let's just get rid of all history. What's the point?
Because it upsets someone. And yet they're the ones who will be like, oh, they're all trying to ban Abraham Lincoln, by which people are just like, someone said he was not perfect, R.E. slavery, which he wasn't. Like, there's no nuance. There's no, like, nothing makes sense. I just finished an article earlier today on Kentucky. They have not only banned people saying gay in literally any grade, like, can't even mention that gay people exist. They've banned all gender affirming care for trans kids. They've banned pretty much everything. And, that's not going to keep your kids safe. It's not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's
amazing. It's like I feel like, people just don't get it. There's always been gay people. There's always been people who have felt that they're not in the right body. They've always been there. They've just been in like hiding. They've just not been, able to be in, like out with the, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they've
Oh yeah.
always been there though. They've always been there.
And they're not going to go
Like it's
away. Whereas you could
like
actually
it's
make shootings
miraculous.
go away. Like, the thing that I actually
Like
read today that was interesting, or the other day, was that in Australia, people actually have more guns now than they did when they started instituting all the background checks and everything. And it's just safer now. Like more people have guns, but it's done in a more safe way, I guess. Because they do have those background checks and they do have, things put in, like red flag laws, I assume. That's another thing that, we kind of need here.
yeah, there's a crazy thing about red flag laws. So someone recently said to me, like, because Florida is trying to pass through like open carry. So we were talking about that, and they were like, "Yeah, but Florida is much safer." And so I was like, all right, I'll go look on this and see. Like we are like less than a point difference, Illinois and Florida, in the gun death injury rate per 100,000 people. So we are that close, right? But if you take into account the fact that like Illinois has a red flag law that we've used about 250 times. Florida has a red flag law that they have used over 9,000 times. So clearly there is a lot of gun violence and gun problems going on in the state of Florida. Like if they didn't have that gun, if they didn't have that red flag law, they would have a lot more gun deaths, like probably way more than us. But like,
Oh yeah.
they use them. And what's interesting is that like I learned recently that the people who use them the most are Republican sheriffs. They are going and taking guns from people because they're dangerous and they shouldn't have guns. And so like all this gun safety legislation works, if Tennessee had a red flag law, which they don't, if they had, from what I understand, the shooter's parents did not want them to have weapons. They were like very concerned about it. I think the weapons, I remember reading that weapons were hidden from them. But like if they'd had a law, like a red flag law, the police could have gone to their house and taken the guns and gone through the system to like decide if that, if they should have guns or not. So things like red flag laws, they work. And like it's crazy when you look at someplace like Florida using theirs like 9,000 times. That's insane. That's a crazy amount of time. And just knowing that it's used, mostly by Republican sheriffs. But they want to pass it, and they've seen that they go up like 30%. Gun deaths go up 30% when they pass open carry. So it's like, what are you guys doing? It's not safe. Sorry.
It's also terrifying. It's also terrifying. I don't think anyone wants to look at that. All right, we are at about time. It's been so nice talking to you and seeing you again, and thank you for everything that you're doing. Like keep it up. Let us know what you're doing, and keep on kicking ass. We will see you later, and see everyone
Bye.
else later. Bye.
Bye.